An official welcome and good morning, good day to you wherever you are across the country this morning. This is the EQI 2.0 Debrief Webinar with the Emotional Intelligence Training Company and your host, David Corey, with my friend and colleague, Mr. Kim Cairns, all the way from beautiful Victoria. Good morning, Kim.
Good morning, Dave. Beautiful fog-bound Victoria this morning.
Oh dear, fog bound, and I'm coming to you from sunny Calgary, Alberta. On this Friday. Okay, so as many of you know, the purpose of our webinar today is to demonstrate what an EQI leadership report debrief conversation sounds like. So a very typical assignment for us is that we have a group of managers from an organization who are coming together for a group leadership development session based on the concept of emotional intelligence. And prior to the session, we send them an electronic invitation to go online and take the EQI. And then we create their reports and they have a telephone debrief with one of our coaches, much like this morning's session. Then they come to the group session where we talk about the various aspects, various components of EQ, of the particular model that we use, and we talk about the importance of those various factors to the job that they do and to leadership in general. And really, what we're encouraging people to do is to grow and develop their skills so that they can be more effective leaders and so that the organization can be more effective as a whole. As most of you probably know, the EQI is the Emotional Quotient Inventory, which is published by Multi Health Systems out of Toronto. The first EQI, the original EQI, was published in 1997. In 2011, it underwent quite dramatic renovations and updates, and we have the current report, which is colorful, packed with information, and a really great addition and a really great tool for us in our work with individual leaders one to one and with groups of leaders for both leadership development and team effectiveness. So the way that the morning is going to work is that we're going to launch into our debrief shortly. We're going to carry on until about a quarter to the hour, at which time we're going to stop and then we're going to take questions. So, what I'd like you to do as participants who are listening to the debrief conversation, what I'd like you to do is every time you have a question, I'd like you to type it into the chat box and we'll store those up over the course of our conversation. And then when we conclude, and as you may guess, we normally take about 1 full hour for this debrief conversation. And here we're going to condense it somewhat so that we leave time for discussion, for questions following the debrief, the demonstration of the debrief conversation. So obviously, what we've done is we have used a mock report, and my colleague Kim Cairns, who is one of our coaches at the Emotional Intelligence Training Company, he will be playing the role of Ed for this debrief demonstration. So that's how we're going to do this, and we're going to jump right in. And please, again, type your questions into the chat box, and we'll take a look at your questions and discuss your questions following the webinar. So, are you ready to begin, Kim?
Yes.
All right. Okay, so let's begin. Thanks for taking the time to meet with me today, Ed. Ed, as you may know, the purpose of our conversation today is to review the results of your online assessment. Now, just before we begin, Ed, I just want to remind you that our conversation is completely confidential. I don't have any reporting requirements. I don't make notes and send those notes to your boss. This is just between you and me, and really taking a look at your results of your online assessment is really just for you. So I just want you to feel free to be able to talk about whatever you feel like you'd like to talk about. How does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds good, Dave. I just want to let you know I did receive the report about an hour ago, but I really haven't had much of a chance to take a look at it.
And that's done intentionally, Ed. Really, what we want to do is we want to go through the report with you and point out some of the less obvious things to you and help you to make sense of what you see there. It really wasn't designed for us to just print off a copy or create a copy and just email it to you and wish you well on your way. It was designed for to review together, and then I'm going to leave the rest of the report with you to read through because there's a lot of text in here. It's as you can see, it's 27 pages, so we don't have time to go through all 27 pages. But what we do have to do is, or what we do have time for, is to take a look at your scores and talk about what they might mean for you. Now, before we get started, do you remember going online and taking the EQI?
Yes, yeah,
And what was
yeah, I
that
do.
like? What was that like for you?
It was interesting. It was some of the questions were similar in nature. It gave me pause a couple of times, but overall, what I tried to do is just go with my first instinct, really, I guess, on most of the questions.
Okay, great. That should produce some pretty good results. So as you can see here, we've got a title page. It is a leadership report, and we'll talk about why it's called the leadership report, and that's here on page 2. And the reason it's called the leadership report is that we've taken your EQ results and we have compared them with a model of leadership called the transformational leadership model. And in this model, we've got 4 dimensions, 4 areas of concern, one of which is authenticity. And why authenticity is important is that we are attracted to and we want to work for leaders who are moral and fair and who are authentic, who don't pretend to be something that they're not, who are just really who they are. And we respect that, and we trust that. When a leader is not behaving in a moral or in a fair way, that makes it more difficult for us to trust that person. And so that's why authenticity is important. Coaching is the dimension of transformational leadership, which is about making sure that employees are growing and developing. And so those kinds of leaders we're attracted to because of what they can give us. They give us the opportunity for us to grow and develop. The next dimension is called insight, and we respect and we admire leaders who are sharing what they've gained with us. Those leaders who share their insights and share their expertise and their knowledge and their wisdom with us, then again, that's a leader that we really want to follow, and we're happy to follow. Finally, we're interested in leaders who are focused on innovation and always asking, how can we do this better? What is another way that we can do this, and how can we improve? And so those 4 dimensions are the dimensions of the kind of leadership that transforms organizations for the future. If organizations stay the same, they don't remain competitive. And so we're looking at encouraging and actually insisting on continuous change for the better. Now, your what was done was the company that produces this report, they took 220 leaders, and those leaders took the same assessment that you did, the EQI, and they also took a transformational leadership assessment, which measures their leadership in these 4 areas. So so what we've done, or what the company has done, is they've actually created a what they call the leadership bar. If you look at the bottom of the page, you'll see that there's a gold bar on top of each of your scores, which indicates the range of scores of the top 50% of leaders as determined by that transformational leadership assessment. And so that's what was done. And so it's really great because not only have you been compared to a representative sample of the North American population, but you've also been compared with this sample of leaders. So we can see your scores in 2 ways. Let's take a look at the next page here. And on this page, we see your executive summary, and we see your 3 highest scores, and we see your 3 lowest scores. We also see your total emotional intelligence score at the top of the page there, and you can see that it was 102. Now, these numbers are standard scores. Standard scores mean that you have been compared with a representative sample of the North American population, and then you've been placed along what you can imagine is the normal curve with respect to these scores. The mean, that is the score that is right in the middle of the normal curve for this particular assessment tool, is 100. So you can see that scores that are around 100 or above are what we would call effective. Scores that are lower than right around 100 are scores which may possibly be in need of improvement. We don't know yet until we actually talk about whether that's important to you, etc. So let's
So,
look. Yep.
so Dave, this means like so my overall EI is reading at 102. So I'm a pretty average guy.
What that means, Ed, is that you are correct in that your score is fairly close to the average, to the that middle range, and average in a statistical sense. So that's where most people score, and I'm actually happy to see scores in that middle range, because that means that's where most people score, and that's generally a good thing. Now, when we're talking about leadership, the bar has actually been raised, and you can see that the bar has been raised on EQ when you look at the gold bar up above your score of 102. You're a little ways away from the leadership range, and so we're going to be talking about what it might mean for you and what it might take for you to improve your effectiveness so that you are operating in the range that your organization expects from you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I think so. So really what I'm going to be trying to do is get into the gold bar in each one of these areas.
Well, the objective is not so much to get into the gold bar as for you to improve your leadership effectiveness. So if this tool can act as a diagnostic and actually help us to learn more about how you behave as a leader, then we can sort of discuss whether there are areas that you can improve in for greater effectiveness. So the goal is really not to get a higher score on the assessment. Right in the name, it's the emotional quotient inventory. We're actually inventorying, or we're taking stock of what's there. It's not a test. It's not like a pass or fail test where if you get a good score, it's good, and a lower score, it's bad. Not necessarily. It's about how you use all of these skills in your day-to-day interactions with others and in the way that you manage yourself. So let's take a look at your high scores, Ed. So your highest score was emotional expression, which suggests or appears that you feel fairly comfortable in expressing your emotions. Does that seem to fit for you?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good fit. I mean, I feel like I can pretty well say whatever's going on for me in most instances. Yeah.
And how well does that work for you in your interactions with others?
Well, I think overall it's okay. I mean, I think that people find me pretty easy to interact with most of the time.
Okay, all right.
Um,
Now, your second highest score, Ed, is in self-regard. And so what this is about having a really healthy view of yourself and sort of the feelings of confidence and being self-assured that goes along with that. And so this suggests that you're a pretty confident guy. Is that true for you?
well, yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that I've even with respect to the leadership situation, I've been in leadership roles pretty well throughout my working life. So I think I feel good about that. I feel good about being in a leadership position most of the time. I mean, I think I'm facing some difficulties in this past couple of years, but overall, yeah, I'm pretty confident about what I can do well.
Okay. Now, with respect to optimism, it seems that you're a pretty optimistic guy. Does that seem true for you as well?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm definitely, I think, more of a half glass full character.
Okay.
Um,
All right.
that's kind of my general approach to things. That things will get better,
Okay.
no matter what it looks like.
So those scores are accurate then. Those highest three subscale scores are fairly accurate.
Yeah, I think so. I think
Okay.
that's
All right.
yeah. I think
Uh,
that's nailed those. I think so. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good
let
look at those three aspects of myself.
let's turn our attention now to your lowest three scores and talk about what those might mean for you. So your lowest score on the assessment is problem solving. Does that surprise you at all?
Well, yeah, it does surprise me quite a bit actually, because I think that I view my role as somebody that is faced with challenges, with problems, and solves them. Maybe the one part that's not surprising me so much is I think I have been struggling with that aspect a bit more in the last couple of years, but I'm surprised at how low that is.
Okay, so let me remind you, Ed, about some of the statements that relate with these various scores. For example, here's a statement from problem solving. The statement is, when I'm really upset, I can't decide what to do. Now, you said three, which is sometimes that's true for you. And so, what would be really great is if this was rarely true for you, that when you're really upset, you can't decide what to do. So tell me about that, Ed. What are those times when you think that maybe upsetness gets in the way of deciding what to do?
Well, I think there's times lately when there's a lot of pressure um, to up our sales numbers, and I'm looking around, and well, frankly, it's a bit difficult with the people that I have working for me right now. It's like they have a different approach to getting the job done. So I feel this pressure from my boss to up our sales numbers, and I look around at the people that I'm working with, and they're spending a lot of time just kind of interacting with each other, chatting. It doesn't seem like there's necessarily a lot of work getting done. Um, and so I think in those instances, I feel a bit frustrated by that. I feel I'm kind of trapped in the middle,
Right.
and knowing that I'm wearing the responsibility for getting those numbers up, and not feeling always that confident that we're going to be able to pull that off.
Right. Right. So that it seems like you may have already answered some of the rationale behind your next response. The next statement is, I tend to worry about a problem rather than try to solve it. And again, you've said that that was sometimes true for you. So tell me about that. Tell me about worry.
Well, I think that worry is. Um, I think it's twofold. I think that I feel like my boss isn't necessarily hearing what it's like for me, what's going on for me in terms of struggling at times, and I worry about my ability to communicate with these younger workers. There seems to be a divide there, that they have a different approach to work than I do, and sometimes it feels like I'm banging my head against a brick wall a bit. So I tend to just be kind of swimming around in that whirlpool in my own head a lot more often lately.
Right. Okay. Yeah, no, that definitely is an issue that right now, Ed. It's not about finding solutions to these issues that you're raising. This is about sort of identifying the issues that are there for you. And we can certainly talk at the end of our conversation about where we go from here, what we do next. But right now, this is about seeing what the diagnostic tool can tell us in terms of the issues that you're facing. Let's look at another one here. I avoid dealing with problems. You said four, which is often true for you. Avoiding dealing problems. That's not good. Would you agree, Ed?
Yeah, no, that's not good at all. And I think that, maybe when I think back to how I answered that, some pardon me, Dave. I got a bit of the flu today. I think when I answered that, I was thinking more about I'm not really able to articulate to my boss what's going on, and it's seemingly I'm not able to articulate to my staff group uh, what's going on from my perspective with regard to their work and us achieving our goals. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. So what do you do? Tell me a bit about your problem solving pattern here, Ed. What generally is the process for you when you've got something that you've got to sort through?
Well, I think I have this tendency to actually just go into my office and try and sort through what direction I should take. Um, so I'm finding I'm spending a lot more time just on my own, um, trying to work through this. And as I'm saying that, I'm thinking I think I'm spending less time talking to my fellow managers about some of this. We're not communicating a lot with other people and seeing what their experience is like. I'm feeling kind of trapped in my own situation, I guess.
Tell me about your team, Ed. How does that go? What is the level of collaboration or feeling like you're actually working with your team?
The management team,
Yeah, the management team and maybe the team that reports to you. I mean, are these potential resources for you to assist you and support you in your problem solving?
well, I guess, from the management team perspective, not really. I mean, and there we are sitting around that table in our meetings, and it's about really kind of reporting what's going on. And some people are doing well, and some people aren't doing so well. Um, and there's, I guess, there's always been this tendency to just present as okay, no matter what's going on, everything's going to be smooth. So it's about putting that face up front, but I'm not necessarily feeling like that behind that face anymore.
Right. Right. Well, Ed, if you look at the second lowest score there, this score is around stress tolerance, and I think maybe there might be a connection. Would you agree that in terms of the stress that you're experiencing, is it related to this issue of problem solving?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think one of the things I've always been pretty good at is once I'm finished my work day, being able to kind of throw a switch and not think too much about it. And I guess there's probably been a bit of a change there in the last couple of years. I find that I'm thinking more about what's not working well at work when I'm at home or when I'm with friends or outside of the workplace. I find it coming into my thoughts more often.
Right. Right, and that's going to show up in your stress tolerance score. Stress tolerance is about the amount of insulation that we've got between what's going on around us and ourselves and how it might affect us. And so the suggestion here is that insulation is thinner. And so what would be helpful for you, I think, is to come up with some strategies and tactics that are going to help to put a little more insulation between you and what's going on in the workplace, and maybe that if we could talk about some maybe some different strategies around problem solving, if that was a little bit clearer to you, you had a little bit more effective approach to problem solving, that might reduce your stress somewhat, or at least assist you to deal with the stress around you. Does that would that make any sense to you? That suggestion?
Yeah, I think that that'd be great if we could come up with some ideas because I feel pretty lacking in the idea department with regard to that right now. So
Right.
and I like your notion of insulation. It feels like there's maybe a few wires that are bare in my own operating system.
Right. Okay. Now, your third lowest score, Ed, is flexibility. And so, at 94, it's not that far off the mean. However, when you compare it with the leadership bar, then there is a gap there, and you know, we might want to talk about how you could be a little bit more adaptable, a little bit more willing to consider the various alternatives that are out there. So tell me a little bit about that, Ed. Uh, First of all, do you relate to the score? Does it fit for you?
Well, I think that I've always been, pretty flexible. It's about dreaming up solutions to problems. And yet I guess there's that tendency in me too. I'm the boss, it needs to be done my way kind of thinking that goes on internally too.
Right.
I'm
Right.
pretty
Yeah.
driven by that, I guess, too.
Well, you know, here's another aspect of flexibility. It's in this statement. I do not like being in unfamiliar situations. You said that was often true for you. So tell me about that. What were you thinking when you said that you often do not like being in unfamiliar situations?
Well, I think what's going on right now is the workplace feels like an unfamiliar situation to me.
Right.
I mean, there's constant changes, from a technical communicating kind of perspective, constant changes with regard to the software that we're using. And I feel like a lot of the time I'm at least a step or two behind being on top of that.
Right.
And then I factor in, I think I've always been a pretty good communicator with people, but I tend to see some glazed eyes when I'm talking to my staff. And
Hmm.
I think in some of those situations, I just try and pound the point home more firmly. And I guess now that I'm thinking about it, that's probably not working out too well for me.
Hmm. Hmm.
So those are stressful situations. It's unfamiliar. I feel like I'm walking around not on firm ground, not on the firm ground of the workplace that I used to feel
Right.
was firm ground.
Right. Okay, so those are your three highest. You know, you've got some great strengths to leverage in addressing other areas, and those are your three lowest scores. As we carry on through the report, on page 4, you see the model that we use, the model that the assessment tool is based upon, and and there are all 15 of the what we call EQ competencies that are measured by the EQI. And if you look at the wheel model for a moment, you'll notice that emotional intelligence is at the center of the model. Really, this concept of emotional intelligence is about the fact that the brain processes emotions and emotional information in addition to all of the cognitive processing that the brain does. And you don't have to know all the details to know that emotions affect us all the time. And they affect us in how we view ourselves, how we interact with others, how we interact with the various situations that we are presented with in the workplace and in life. And then there are these skills that are related to this concept of emotional intelligence. Skills such as self-regard. Now, self-regard might not sound like a skill, but how we regard ourselves is something that is based on beliefs and assumptions about ourselves, and some people are really good at seeing what's real about ourselves, and other people are kind of limited in how they view themselves by various beliefs that really are not true. So it's about looking at and seeing how we can be more effective at these various 15 skills that we've got here. And they're divided up into 5 categories, as you can see. And then in the outer ring, we've got some of the outcomes or some of the things that are the result of these 15 skills. Things like well-being, that if you have these 15 skills, you have a greater ability to create a sense of personal and professional well-being for yourself. We know it's related to job performance, so that's why that's in that outer ring. And finally, this is about emotional and social functioning. We are emotional and social beings, and it's really important for us to function emotionally and to connect socially. as well. So if you ever or if you're ever wondering about any of these things in terms of what these things mean, you can always refer back to this page here. Let's go to page 5 now. And on page 5, what you'll see, Ed, is you'll see that we've got an overview of all of your scores. So there's a total score at the top, and then there's a score for each of the 5 categories of skills, and then there are 15 subscale scores. And you'll have to forgive me, I have a very noisy cat who loves to announce her presence. Hopefully she'll calm down shortly. One of the hazards of working from home. Now we've got the 3 highest and 3 lowest scores that we've already looked at here on the page, but we also have some other scores that it's always interesting to note how these various competencies interact with each other. These 15 competencies are a little bit like instruments in an orchestra, and they need to operate and function in harmony with one another for greater effectiveness. And so it's always interesting to look at how they compare with each other. And if they're out of balance, then those imbalances are reported on in the report. And so when you read through the rest of your report, you'll notice that there are places where these imbalances are talked about. So right now, let's take a look at a few things. I just want to draw your attention to self-actualization. Self-actualization, as you can see, is about the pursuit of meaning. It's about self-improvement. It's about sort of being in a role which has meaning and a sense of purpose and fulfillment for you. And your score at 99 is not low. It's right around the mean. But in comparison to some of your higher scores, like emotional expression and self-regard, there's a bit of a difference there. So tell me, Ed, about the sense of fulfillment and the sense of meaning and purpose that your current role has for you.
Well, I think I've touched on that a bit, Dave, just in terms of I don't feel on top of my game at work like I have felt on top of my game at work earlier in my life.
Right.
And I think that there's a degree of like, here's where I'm at, and I need to keep making this work in order to get the house paid off, the kids through university.
Right.
And yet, is it really what I want to be doing at this point in my life?
Mm-hmm.
And how much am I enjoying it every day? I mean, those are some of the thoughts that go through my head.
Yeah.
And I think that, not always, because I am pretty optimistic that things will get better, but there's those moments where I feel like I'm in my own leg hold trap.
Right. Right. So Ed, if we could maybe talk about ways of you dealing with your role that feel more effective to you, that where you feel like you're really making some headway, that might help to improve a score such as self-actualization. Do you see how that works?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
In conjunction with my kids applying for scholarship money, I think that might make sense.
All right.
But both of those things.
Let's go down the page and we'll take a look at assertiveness. You'll see is one that we've not yet talked about. We haven't talked about emotional self-awareness, and at 105, that's a fairly healthy score. And this is about, of course, understanding, being in touch with your own emotions, and sort of knowing how that affects you. And I think. If we were to continue our sessions together and get involved in some coaching, we might look at how emotional self-awareness ties into and can support your efforts at problem solving, and just sort of so that you're more in tune with the signals that are coming from your environment, in terms of how you're reacting to your environment and how that might affect problem solving. So we'll leave a further discussion of that at the moment, but we may come back to that at some point. Let's talk about assertive.
Just a quick
Sure.
question there,
Yeah, go
Dave.
ahead.
Something that comes to my mind is I look at that difference. I'm looking at the difference between my emotional self-awareness and my emotional expression, and I'm thinking, okay, am I saying a lot of stuff that I'm not even sure about what's going on inside?
Yeah, good
Like I'm
observation, Ed. Good
I
observation. And
I I'm thinking that's it. I don't think there should be a gap there, should there?
well, it's a great observation, and you're right. We may wonder about the content of your emotional expression if your emotional self-awareness is more than 10 points less. And you see that there's a 13-point difference there. And we kind of regard any difference of 10 or more as something that we should really pay attention to. And you do have a 13-point difference there. So yes, absolutely, it would probably be a fruitful conversation to talk about the content of your emotional expression, and if that's just just saying uh, the first thing that pops into your head, then it may require a little bit more emotional self-awareness for it to be a considered expression of what's really going on for you.
Right.
And so certainly we could explore that area in future coaching sessions as well.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, I don't know, when I'm around people that are really talking a lot about what's going on for them, I'm not always impressed by that, and I'm thinking, well, maybe I'm falling into that same category myself.
Right.
I don't know.
Absolutely.
That's just thought
Now,
that went through my head.
Now, your assertiveness score is healthy, and assertiveness is a little bit different than emotional expression. Emotional expression is really more specific. It is about the expression of emotions versus assertiveness, which is about the expressing emotions as well as beliefs and just being able to say what you need to say when you need to say it. So there doesn't appear to be an issue with you being able to say what you need to say when you need to say it. However, there is a bit of a difference between your score and emotional expression and on assertiveness. So, that again, that would be an interesting area to explore and interesting to see how your assertiveness maybe impacts others. And certainly we could explore that a little bit as well in future sessions. But now in order to get through what we need to get through, I'm just going to hurry us along a little bit and just point out your score on independence, which is at 96. It's not low, but again, in comparison to some of your other scores, there's a bit of a contrast there. So tell me a little bit. Do you think that, or do you feel that independence is a bit of a lower score for you? And how could that be when really you're in a position of leadership within your organization?
Well, I mean, I think it's about dreaming about being somewhere else. I mean, given what goes on from above, my boss, and given what's going on with regard to my team that I'm working with, there are days when I just wish I was just working more on my own.
Right,
Um, it seems like I find myself in positions where I'm seemingly having to come up with a lot of answers and addressing other people's needs and running out of gas with regard to doing that. So
right.
it's that I don't know. There's a certain amount of fight or flight to it, I think, in my own mind, right? And so there's thoughts about just being somewhere where I was just able to just operate more independently, I think.
Right. So that feeling of dependency is probably what has impacted your score in independence. And so we see that it is a little bit lower compared with other scores.
Mm-hmm.
Let's carry on and look at the whole interpersonal composite area. This is all about connecting with others, and so we've got a specific score in interpersonal relationships at 103. It's not low, but there's a small gap between your score and the leadership bar. And so, that might be again another area to discuss in terms of improving your leadership ability, your leadership effectiveness, would be to look at the relationships that you've got with your direct reports, with your peers, with your manager, and look at whether there are ways that those relationships could be improved.
Yeah, and I think, for me, Dave, I'm thinking when I think interpersonal relationships too, I'm thinking about, my inability to turn the work stuff off is also impacting my relationship with my wife, and it's impacting my relationship with my friends too.
Right.
Um, which, now that I'm thinking about it and as we're going through this, I need to be more present, I think, in those arenas as well. Anyway, that's yeah.
Mm. And one of the ways of demonstrating presentness is empathy, which is the next score that you've got there. And again, it's actually within the gold bar range, but you can see that it's lower on the gold bar range. And this is about intentionally watching for how others are feeling, and listening carefully to the words that they're saying, but also what they're not saying, because of course people communicate things to us in ways other than words. So what are their actions telling you? What is their body language telling you? And just really making sure that they feel listened to. And it's one of the wonderful ways of improving relationships is practicing empathy more often, and really trying to, you talked about the a little bit of a disconnect between yourself and some of the younger workers in your workplace, and empathy might help with that in terms of really trying to understand and appreciate how they feel the way that they do and why they feel the way they do. And that might give you some really great information. And what it always does when someone really takes the time to sit and listen to us and really help us to feel heard, we're drawn to that person, and it improves the relationship immensely. You see how that can help?
Yeah, what I had running through my head as you were talking there was, I think empathy, my understanding of it is um, actually being curious. And so what came to mind as you were talking about those younger workers is maybe there is an opportunity for me to be more curious about how they actually go about solving problems and doing their work, rather than
Absolutely.
putting
Yeah,
all my energy into wanting them to do it my way.
right. Yeah, no, that could be a really
So
great thing.
yeah, yeah,
And
it's
then
just interesting. That's what leapt to my mind.
And then one final piece of the interpersonal area is social responsibility. And that's, a lot of people think that giving back to others, being socially conscious and being helpful and helping people is a nice thing to do. And really, what this model suggests to us is that it is a necessary thing to do, that we human beings need to give back. We need to find ways that we can be of use to others, that ways that we can serve others. In fact, recent neuroscience research supports this, that our physiology is actually more constructive when we're in service of others. So that's interesting. That is that, we have more of the positive neurotransmitters circulating in our circulation, and we have fewer of the not so positive neurotransmitters in circulation when we're in service of others. And I find that really fascinating. And your score, again, while not low, is slightly below the leadership bar. Leaders serve others, and there's a concept that was created some decades ago called servant leadership, and this idea about making sure that our employees have what they need in order to do the most effective work they can do is about serving them. How can we serve them? How can we give back to them? And for you, Ed, this is about thinking about those people that report to you and thinking about what it is that they need. What can you give them? based on your experience, based on your knowledge and your wisdom, how can they benefit from what you have to give? That's a way of thinking about social responsibility for leaders in workplaces. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does, Dave. I mean, I think that you've given me quite a bit of food for thought today. Actually, this has been interesting. I want to be able to read through the report in a bit more detail.
Absolutely. I'm going to leave the report for you to read through, and you've got my contact information. And in terms of next steps and where we go from here, Ed, the most common thing, of course, is coaching, and your organization has invested in coaching, and so we will be meeting together on a regular basis over the next few months to discuss these issues. And each time you are going to be given homework. Your homework for our next meeting is to read through the rest of the report and circle and highlight those things which resonate with you, those things that speak to you, those things, those ideas which you find helpful and useful, which you'd like to incorporate. And I'd like you to pick a minimum of 3 things that you would like to work on. And so your homework from now till next time is to pick those 3 areas that you would really like to improve in based on your reading of the report and your reflecting on it and our conversation today. How does that sound? Or are you willing to do that?
Yeah, yeah, I can definitely commit to doing that.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks very much, Ed. At that point, ladies and gentlemen, we will end our demonstration debrief, and we'll take a look at the questions that you've got, and so please send those questions in, and we'll discuss those. So Kim, just but while those questions are coming in, and I'm just going to ask you from your perspective, how did that debrief seem to you?
Uh, it seemed fine, fine, Dave. I I I think that Ed. I mean, to me, the whole objective really is to have folks have an opportunity to increase their self awareness about how they're operating, and I think that's a valuable part of this model and this tool. Is it gives us the language to be able to take a look at our own operating system and how that impacts us as individuals and how that impacts those around us. So I think,
Absolutely. Yeah, and I just want to remind everyone that really this is one way to approach this. That you do not have to do it the way we do it. That you could choose a different approach, a different tack, if you will, in how to go about this, and that's perfectly fine. I think the important thing. Sorry about that. I think the important thing is that we don't get too fixed to a particular way of going about this. And I know that Kim, that's one of your soapbox items is to not get too pedantic or too much in a rut in how we go about these reports. And really, if it's to be truly client centered, then of course we want to be checking in with the client the whole way along. And one question I didn't ask you as Ed, which I know you always ask up front, Kim, is more about what the client wants out of the conversation. So maybe you could just speak about that for a bit.
yeah, I think that's a good question to open with after covering the confidentiality, and and to actually ask that question a few times. How are we doing so far? Is this making sense for you? Uh, is there anything else you're curious about or wondering about? And and I think again, I just really want to emphasize that yeah, there is no by rote way of doing a debrief. In my estimation, there's probably slightly over 7 billion different ways to do a debrief, depending on who we're doing it with. So
Right, good point. We've got a question, and the question is, thank you very much, Robin. The question is, wondering if you know why 220 leaders were chosen for the sample and how representative of great leaders they were. Yeah, good question, Robin. I was at a presentation by Multi Health Systems when they first introduced this report, where they did talk more about that study that they did and that model that they created and the assessment tool that they used, but I can't recall the details. And so, what I'm happy to do for any of you who are interested is to get those details and pass those along. So really in each report it just says these leadership dimensions were identified from research conducted on 220 leaders who took the same assessment you did, the EQI, and who also responded to a leadership assessment measuring performance across these 4 areas of leadership. It goes on to say that these leaders held positions of mid-level management through to C-suite leadership roles and were from a variety of industries, healthcare, technology, financial services, and construction across North America. The majority of leaders were working in large organizations, over 400 employees. As a group, the leaders had significantly higher emotional intelligence than the general population. In fact, the average total EI score for leaders was 14 points higher than that of the general population. So that's all we've got right here handy. But I know that those details and that study MHS has, and they would be particularly willing to let people know the details of that. So I know it's available. So we'll dig that up and we'll certainly pass that information on to anyone who's interested. Other questions? You're welcome. Other questions that anyone has for us? At a couple points, and a question that we often get is about whether we're venturing into areas that may be a little bit psychological in nature, and what is the line between coaching, which really this debrief conversation falls into, and counseling. And as you heard, when we talked about Ed's problem solving and stress tolerance, that it was clear that he was experiencing some issues which were clearly providing big roadblocks in his workplace effectiveness. And they were kind of psychological in nature in terms of being able to deal with stress, etc. And it's really important, I think, for us to remind clients that we're not psychologists or we're not counselors, unless we are. I see at least one person on the attendance list that is a psychologist, unless we're a psychologist, in which case, of course, then we can go there and we can feel, quite justified in going into counseling. So we have to remind people that we're not counselors, that we are whatever we are. We're coaches, or we're HR professionals, or leadership development consultants, or whatever we are, and that we want to make sure that we provide a service which is appropriate to the situation. And we don't want to play in the area of counseling, and we don't want to pretend that we understand more than we actually do. And so we need to act with integrity around that, and make sure that that we're not going into areas that we shouldn't be in. Kim, do you want to talk anything, comment on that whole area of the coaching counseling dichotomy?
Yeah, well, I think you've covered most of it there, Dave. I think that the reality, again, for a lot of folks, is just it's about creating that space for them to be able to talk about what's really going on in their lives. And Ed talking about his stress and what some of the factors were, it's an opening for him to just think about that in a broader context than that worrying about it as he has been up to this point.
Right.
So it's about, to me, it's really about just encouraging that kind of dialogue and self-exploration, which I don't think is of a counseling nature at all. It's really taking a look at what's impacting how you're living your life, what's impacting perhaps less than a fulfilling life at this point? And what are some other strategies that potentially you could employ that might address those situations?
Sure. Thank you, Kim. You know, the other thing that I think is that I maybe didn't demonstrate as much as I would in an actual situation is going back to the items and the person's responses, the respondents' responses that they chose, because I think there's tremendous amount of awareness that can be gained from asking people about their choice of response. You know, we did that a little bit here, but we could certainly do it more, particularly in the area of stress tolerance and flexibility, and just help Ed to understand more about the choice of responses and more about that particular competency, because those competencies are best defined by the statements that relate to them, and not some sort of colloquial understanding of what that might mean. So that's something that we have the wonderful opportunity to do with the EQI, which is unlike some other instruments where you never know what the answers are, what the respondents' responses are, and in some cases you never know what the right answer is anyway. And so you simply have a result to work with, and so I like this method better. You know, some people say it's a criticism that we're actually operating on what people's own awareness of their own ability is, and yes, we are. But I think that's really interesting, and it can also help people to come to greater awareness. Uh, Kim, any other comments? We've got a lot of wonderful people are typing in a lot of thanks and great feedback session, all of which we appreciate, and not a lot of questions, so that's kind of interesting. Uh, Kim, any other comments or observations or anything that you'd like to let people know in our remaining few minutes?
Um, well, just head to our website, folks, and take a look. For those of you that might be interested in becoming certified in the tool, take a look at our upcoming certification courses. They're run really across the country: Vancouver, Calgary, Toronto, and Ottawa. So take a look at those dates and see if any of those work out for you. The other thing that I just wanted to add is, further to what Dave was just saying, every time that you use the tool, once you become certified, you will generate a client report and a coach's report. So there are a number of different strategies contained in that coach's report with regard to approaching a debrief, in addition to having all of the questions and the client's responses, which I agree with Dave can be very helpful in the debrief process. And other than that, no, thanks for attending today, folks, and have a good weekend, everybody.
I see a lot of people who are certified to use the EQI, both the 2.0 and the 1.0. For those of you who are certified in the 1.0, know that you are welcome back to attend any one of our 2.0 courses if you feel like that a refresher would be in order for you. That would be a great way to learn with others. And also for those of you who are 2.0, for all of you who are certified through us, you have access to the members page on our website. And if you have forgotten the password, feel free to write in and get the password, etc., so that you can access the various resources that we've posted there. We've also, for those of you who are 1.0 certified, we have the 2.0 PowerPoint slide deck posted there on for your download. So you can go and take a look at that and maybe take a look and see whether the information is different than what you currently possess. So lots of resources available for you, and know that we're always happy to hear from you. You can always call the EQ hotline, which hopefully all of you have, and you can always visit the website to get the EQ hotline, which of course is a support and a resource for you anytime you need it with respect to using the EQI in your work. And if there's any other ways that you can think of that we can support you to do what you do, please let us know. We're always interested and willing and able to lend support to you in your work with the EQI and emotional intelligence, and come back and join us again for future webinars. On that note, I am going to wish you a wonderful weekend, and please do stay in touch. Thanks everyone for joining us, and that's it for now. Bye for now.